We're back with our eighth episode of the Utility Strategy Podcast, the first infrastructure podcast to shine a light on what we love to call utility strategy. As we all know, buried utilities pose an enormous risk to any infrastructure project and create extreme uncertainty amongst the different stakeholders. The thing is that with the right utility strategy, we're able to mitigate that risk and streamline our project, which is what our podcast is all about, sharing and gaining all kinds of insights that will enable just that, helping project managers, utility coordinators, estimators, mappers, planners, designers, engineers, and basically any other stakeholder overcome the challenges of buried utilities in our right-of-way. To help us do just that, we have here with us today Jim Schauer. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
That is correct, Schauer.
Yeah,
like
Jim Schauer. Yeah. So who is, some of you probably know from the awesome Coffee with Jim and James podcast, and who's a champion of the oil and gas industry. Today, Jim serves as the VP EAM Services at Energy Worldnet, the global cloud-based industry platform leader in OQ, compliance management, asset management, training and education services. Over 20 years of experience in the oil and gas industry, during which Jim has served as a CEO, managing director of a leading LNG energy company. He's led interstate pipeline development in the Gulf Coast. He's led unregulated marketing, natural gas sales teams across the country. And he has spent nearly 13 years in regulated natural gas utilities. So, Jim, before we dive in, let's talk a bit about the podcast for a second. I don't know about you, but for us, this has been an amazing way to connect with the industry, especially in a post-COVID world. So, any thoughts? What do you think?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's great to be here with you gentlemen today, and an honor to be on your podcast. We have been doing our podcast for it'll be coming up on 2 years this spring, and we actually started it I'll say as therapy for us. James and myself, we would travel throughout the year and give presentations, attend conferences, do meetings, et cetera. We'd be out with people. And when COVID really struck and everybody got locked down, we didn't know what to do with ourselves. Oh, we did, but we're like,
oh my God, yeah.
We wanted to be in touch and in contact. And so we did it, and we thought it would maybe last 10 episodes, 5, whatever. And so we started doing it, and all of a sudden people started to call us and said, wow, that's great. We've seen your face. So then it grew and it grew. We got more comfortable. And that was a big thing for me at my age. I'm in my, let's just say, my upper 50s. When James said, we're going to do a podcast, I didn't even know what a podcast was. And then he said, we're going to do a Zoom meeting. I said, well, so anyways, no, it was good. It was really good. It was a great way to stay connected with the industry. And it really grew from more of a personal, we just wanted to stay in touch with folks, to then people are saying, hey, we want to learn, at trade shows, we always learn about blank. Can you do this as a subject? And we said, that's a great idea. So we started to get subjects. We started to get feedback, and it grew and grew and grew. And again, I think I said it, we're going to be up for our 100th episode. We're going to record it here in the
virtual clapping coming.
So hang on. So that went from the COVID Pivot podcast to the COVID Constant, the Constant podcast. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and it did, and we just thought it was going to be a bridge. It was more so to help us and help the industry, and we'll move on. And what I think we're finding too is that when we get back to whatever life as normal is, I think so many people have taken advantage of this virtual platform, whether it's podcasts or trade shows or conferences virtually, where a lot of people wouldn't go to them personally. It could be engineers, project managers that just don't have the bandwidth, but there's great things to learn. And I think that if a person of that could attend a conference, AGA, American Gas Association conference virtually, and pop in for some sessions that are really keen to them, boy, that's a win. As well as the people like ourselves that would go in person and really relationship build. And that's one thing with the energy industry we all know is that relationships are key to it. It's, your friends, who you know. It's not just what your company or you do. It's really the whole relationship and the value that you can bring to everybody.
That is so true. And I think, we look at other industries, like we look at the tech industry and kind of entrepreneurship world and venture capital. And there's tons of podcasts there, tons. And it's kind of our industry, like when I say ours, I mean like traditional industries. So civil engineering, oil and gas, manufacturing, those type of industries were a bit left out, like I don't see as many podcasts. So it felt like we had to. There's so yeah.
So hang on. Are we saying this is becoming the 19th hole on the golf course?
I think it is. I truly do. I think it's going to morph and enhance into, what people are comfortable with. I will state that people want to get back face to face and shake hands.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
They want to do that, but so many people.
There's no replacement to face to face.
No, there isn't. But people are going to say, I can't go to that conference, but I really want to do this, there. And they could do that virtually. That's a win-win. If we can take one thing from a conference and help an engineer, she or he do something better and make our world safer, that's the objective, and that's a win. So
yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to start getting to the nuts and bolts of this. I want to start really getting to the technical. I know that we've just gone through the.
Go.
So let's go for it. All right, David. Why don't you start rolling it out?
So let's talk about a bit of the challenges, or the biggest challenges of the early stages of a new pipeline project. Like, as someone who was the CEO of a utility company, so maybe talk to us a bit about that, how it looks from a leadership perspective and also from a kind of boots on the ground perspective.
Yeah, and when we talk about pipelines, we're talking like midstream, like those that would feed.
Yeah, midstream.
Okay.
Yeah. Feed is what we want to be talking about. Yeah.
So for our audience, as we know, we have transmission pipelines that run from here across the country, and then these midstreams that come off, and that's a little bit of my area that I've dealt with over my tenure in the energy industry in the past, not now, but in the past. Those are great, because all of a sudden you will have maybe a town that has been underserved, that's growing, that needs an additional pipeline to help meet its needs of growth. It could be an industrial customer. In my past, I was based out of Texas. So Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, that was a hotbed for a lot of industrial growth. And a lot of the industrials need an absorbent amount of gas as well as gas pressure to operate. So big volumes. The biggest thing is really, when you look at a pipeline project like that, the project itself is a big deal. Putting boots on the ground, digging holes, right? Digging paths, digging trenches, welding, all those things. But really, before it, the 60-70% of the time of planning, looking at right-of-ways, looking at where you're going, looking at physical conditions, looking at all those aspects, and as well as potentially what could be it doesn't really happen that often in that, but what could be a benefit of putting a pipeline in there? People would say, well, what do you mean a benefit besides the end use of getting natural gas? Are you able to do something to the topography that maybe needs to be enhanced, and you can do that at the same time? There's so many things about it, but really getting back the planning, the engineering, the environmental studies, the right-of-ways, looking where they're going to go. And then the future, looking at, okay, if we put this midstream in here, we're building it for an industrial plant, okay, that uses 2,000 decatherms or 2,000 MCF a day, which is an absorbent amount. That could heat a Minnesota home for 18 years. So what they use one day could feed a Minnesota home for 18 years. That's pretty big. So then you have to think about, what are you building it just for today? Or are you going to build it for what that plant may look like in 5 years or 10 years, as well as what else could grow in that area? So really, just anything to do with life, planning and thinking about the future, I think, is key to it. That's the biggest aspect, first and foremost. That takes a lot of it. Your permit gathering, all those items, that's a big chunk. When you actually get out there, if you've done all your planning well, then the rest of it goes pretty smooth. There's always some hiccups, especially if you're going, let's just say, underwater or whatever, and you have to do HDD, do some, directional boring. That's concerns too, because all of a sudden you're going into an area where you don't know what's happening underground. And then it gets into thank goodness we live in this time where we have technologies where we can, as industry, wrap the pipe before it gets directional board, so it's protected, because you're not going to be able to see what's going on. If it's scraping rock or bedrock or something, that could cause problems down the road. So the more that we do up front to make our pipes safer going in the ground, the longer life we have with them, as well as the more, more comfort that they're safe under the ground, and that we did everything we can to make them as safe as possible. Did I kind of hit on that?
I'm just going to add something out of left field. You just talked about a lot of investigation, a lot of different mechanisms to make sure that things are safe within the investigation area.
Yep.
One thing I've seen throughout my entire career is the pipeline companies focusing a lot about the above ground versus the below ground. They do a lot of right-of-way surveys. They have their land acquisition, and then they start looking at records and start basing their engineering based upon the records, and not the verification of actual utilities, not the actual, they're doing sweeping. Sweeping is a great mechanism, but it's only looking for conductive utilities. They're not putting that entire package together, which really it's something it's boggled my mind for years, that taking everything, looking at the biggest item in critical path is that underground infrastructure. And just taking in a piecemeal approach, I'd call it. They do a little bit here, they do a little bit more investigation there. Instead of doing that really thorough investigation up front, they're piecemealing it right through until they get to the proponents. So
I understand. I think that when we look at our industry and wanting it to be as safe as possible at a micro level, 811, call before you dig, right? That's a wonderful entity that we have in the United States, where they go out, you call 811, they come out, even in our backyards, they'll come out and they'll mark it.
Yeah.
Now, so many times, let's just pretend we're like my house that used to be in Texas. I ran a natural gas line out to a fire pit. I ran this over here, permitted in the whole bit, and everything was good. But let's just say that somebody goes to that home now. When I was living there, I knew exactly where the lines were. So if somebody wanted to plant some trees in the backyard, I could say, don't go here, don't go there. Somebody could go in that backyard and just assume that the back 5 feet of easement is where the lines are and everything else is good. And I think that micro example can manifest at times into people saying, oh, it's probably okay. We know that there's a transmission line over here. We know there's a midstream over here, and there isn't anything else, or assume that. And when we assume, that's a problem in the world. And I think you're absolutely right. I don't think people do it out of neglect. I think many times people do it out of maybe, not the best picture, full picture, maybe not the most information that they have. And again, we're getting to an exciting time in the world where a lot of this information is now being aggregated so people can see the whole picture. As you said, above and below ground. There could be an abandoned line somewhere that's no longer in use, that it's not even on the books, but it's still an important entity to understand that it's down there. Yeah. Especially when you get into the LDC worlds, we're not just talking about natural gas lines, but we're talking about water lines and fiber optics and cable and electric, everything. So I agree with you, and I think that's an exciting part where we're at. Like at Energy Worldnet, we've been around for 3 decades, and we keep honing and getting better with the idea that we want to give information as much as possible to the people in their phones out on the site. So if somebody needs to check somebody's OQs, you can do it real time right then and there to be assured that that person is, up to speed.
So just you tell everyone, OQs is operator qualifications. Not everyone's going to be a.
I'm sorry.
Not everyone's going to.
Operator qualifications. Thank you. And our industry is riddled with acronyms.
Acronyms.
Operator
We love
qualification.
it. We love it.
What that means in a nutshell is that an operator, like a gas company, says if you want to do work on our system, whether you're an employer or contractor, you will have the knowledge, skills, and ability, blah blah blah, and take some tests and study. And the biggest thing is to have the knowledge and to be able to use that knowledge. It also goes into certifications. Maybe it's not a qualification, but maybe a manufacturer says, if you want to use this fusion machine, you will take our class and become certified. And then, like in my world, I'm very interested in assets, fusion machines, gas detectors, welding machines, anything that needs to be calibrated, inspected. Because that's the other thing. Maybe the person is very well versed, but if that machine isn't running up to speed, that can be a problem too. So getting back to that, it's kind of all encompassing.
Perfect. It's really funny. We have so many different mechanisms to make sure that we're doing things correctly. But the truth and inherent item is, it's all about everyone caring and everyone putting in their 100% and really not just doing things to do things, but to really do them because they want to do them and they want to make sure that the site is safe and making sure that everyone's working in a more cooperative fashion. And things like your OQs really keep them in check. And it's another point to say, wait a minute, I see the list of all the items which I have to do. Do I want to do that minimum point of care, or do I want to do more? So I do appreciate the fact how you guys have modernized it, and it's now available on the phone. It's really available immediately. So that's a really great point. Excellent.
Yep. And you folks at 4M, I mean, your use of technology and combining that into usable format is key. There's so much information out there, but we need it in a format where it's usable and we can actually, understand it. So when a pipeline is going in the ground, if we can see not only above but below the full picture for people that are in the pipeline industry, or because I'm not in it right now, but those that are in it, if they understand what the full picture is, not 85% of the picture, but 100% of the picture, or 99% of the picture is better than 85. There's always going to be some variables. I would say, I don't know what your plus or minus is, but the more we know, the better.
I think it's about giving some sort of degree of confidence like that. That's why we use data today. Like, I don't think that in any industry, it doesn't matter really what you're doing, you're not expecting 100% data. Like, because it's never going to happen. I think that actually Jeff Bezos, I think he has a pretty cool quote, and I might not be on point here, but he says that to make a decision, you need about 60% of the data. Once you have 60%, you need to make a decision. If you have more than that, you're waiting too long, because you need to act. You need to act. And like, we're not gonna, like, especially in our industry, where it just takes so long to put a project together. Like, it takes, depending, you can take like conception can be 10 years before you even start laying stuff in the ground, before you start construction. So like, suspending the decision making like by a year or 2 years until you kind of have all that data, it can be challenging.
Well, David, that actually goes back into the whole argument of the chicken and the egg, right? If you put a lot of money up front, then the actual project life cycle is 10 years down the road. Will it actually be executed? And did I waste all this money up front? And it's really especially when we have a lot of politically motivated projects where, somebody gets elected and he wants to build a new subway, he wants to reinforce, he says, okay, we're going to have to reinforce the gas pipeline system to this city because they don't have enough gas. And and then 4 years later, he's gone and the priorities change. And anyways, it's a very big paradox. And I'm sorry, Jim, I cut you off there.
No,
please.
No, and I get it, and I'll take it. I'll step away from the political side of it. But you spend 2 years planning a. I see what I did there. You spend 2 years planning a pipeline project, and then all of a sudden you hire. What do we do in the industry? We get contractors and we sign contracts and people start to get on site. And if there's something there that will stop that project from going and, delay it for 2 weeks while something is resolved or understood, or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, boy, the ticker keeps going, and that's when project managers start pulling their hair out, because they're like, we're paying, 5 crews this amount of money to sit around. We need to get this resolved. We should have saw it 2 months ago or 8 months ago, and that's, again, where people really, being diligent helps everybody in the process, to where the, equipment actually gets on site and starts to do the digging.
And the bigger the project, the more you're prone to risks. Yeah, like there's a difference between a 5-mile pipeline and a 50-mile pipeline. Like so.
Absolutely, and as soon as you start crossing political borders, i.e., like state lines, we know where that goes. That's totally different than running a, like you said, a 2 or 5 mile lateral off something. So
yeah.
So I'm going to ask another really interesting question, and this is really out of right field this time. But is it the Vegas? I'll call it the Vegas effect. You had one project that went. You didn't do that right amount of due diligence, but the project succeeded at the end, and you ended up making money. Is it that effect where I've done it already once before, and I'll double down and bet again, and try and do that again and again and again and again until I get burnt, and all of a sudden say, oh, you know what? Maybe I should have.
It's never been that way in my world.
Okay.
Honestly, we take, in my past pipeline experience, we took every project extremely serious, and after the project, we had what we would call a decompression, or a
debrief.
We got everybody back to a debrief and got everybody together. What worked well? What did we miss? What can we learn for next time? And we want to implement the things that we learned from that in the next project. So the next project is more productive. Well, let's stop. Safer, first and foremost.
Number one, yeah.
All those things. So I've never, in any of the organizations that I work for, we've never adhered to that whole Vegas idea. I understand what you're saying.
It worked once, let's try it again, and let's go from there. That's a positive thing to hear, and I do appreciate hearing that from you. And it's really I don't want to say, it all comes down to that bottom line. If I'm going to take the money and invest it in the upfront, I might not not have that tangible recovery. I'm investing money up front, and it's not going into construction. And there's that real world thinking item. Investing money into engineering, it's on paper. Investing money into construction, you're actually seeing the results. You actually see, okay, I have that backhoe working. Let's solve that issue by putting money into there. But it's really that the conceptual versus the tangible, where I want to put the money into the conceptual so I can actually reduce the issues on the tangible. But it's really a tough thing to get around. And a lot of companies will not invest into that conceptual because they want to see the tangible. They want to see the results. They want to see people working. So it's a very...
Yeah, I understand that. And the energy industry is a little bit different, because when you start looking at ROIs, we're not looking at ROIs necessarily of 12, 18, 24 months. They could be 5, 10, 15 years, depending on the application. Yeah. So a lot of the energy, investments and such, by either the organizations like an industrial organization that wants to pay to have a midstream brought into their chemical plant, let's say, that's a lot of money. We could be talking millions of dollars, and that's not going to be recouped. But if it makes their production better, if it can make the production in ways safer, and again, they have ROIs of 8 to 10 years, that might fall into a very, very attractive place for them, because they're looking at the next 50 or 75 years. So a lot of these thought processes in energy are very long term.
Well, that's really interesting. How about the regulated utilities with the rate cases, where they have to go for public rate cases? Is that also factored into there?
Well, that's a little bit different world.
Yeah. So
when you look at an LDC, rate cases, I've been involved in many of them in the past, and there are a lot of, you're asking the Public Service Commission, Public Utility Commission of that state to grant you to raise your prices. Because a lot of people don't realize that in LDCs and gas utilities, people think.
So hang on just again, an LDC is a local distribution company. Sorry, just for the layman.
Distribution company, which is, let's just say, a People's Gas, Consumers, Eversource, Atmos Energy, CenterPoint Energy, to name just a few. They don't make any money on the sale of gas. They just make their money on the delivery of gas. So a lot of people out in the industry will say, oh, wow, natural gas is up to blank. Let's just say it's at $5. The energy industry must love that because they're making more money. It's a pass-through. They just make it on the delivery. So if gas is at $5 an MCF and their the delivery is $1, let's keep it simple. So $6 total for that MCF or decatherm. Actually, the energy industry wants the gas prices lower. I mean, like when I used to live in Minnesota, when natural gas prices rise, I would keep the thermostat at 65, 64 because you're paying more. Now, if it was $3 an MCF, I'd be like, oh, let's keep it up. So there's actually more throughput. I'm as a consumer, instead of spending $6, I'm spending $3 so I can keep it hotter. But the energy company is making more money because it's on every MCF pass through. So rate cases are important. I know a lot of money too in the rate cases go back to making the infrastructure safe, redoing it. I mean, it's a pain for us when we drive down the street and half the street's dug up, but knowing that one, they're replacing it maybe, and it's going to make us safer. And a lot of times they'll do joint projects. So while the street's dug up, they're not just doing gas, but they're doing electric, fiber optic.
Lots of fiber now, yeah.
Yep. Joint trenching is
you're talking about the utopia of everyone working in coordination and in Congress. It's a great concept. I'd like to, I'd love to see that all the different utilities coordinate at one time, saying, okay, we're going to do an integrated utility project of water, sewer, on all the shallows. Everyone together once, so there's only one go through and one pass through for the street being dug up. It's not always a reality. It's not always a reality, but you know what? It's a great thing to really to strive for, and again, looking back and looking at all the different things that have happened over the last 15 years, the last 20 years in the industry, I do see that we've gotten a lot safer by the awareness of the factor of safety. And safety is really front. It's really foremost in the front and paramount. Or I'm trying to recall the first and foremost. Oh, there we go. Front and paramount. First and foremost. Safety of the project, safety of the employee, and unfortunately, I do have to say it's about every single. I believe almost every single safety rule has been written in blood, unfortunately. And right now, that we're actually getting proactive and really making sure that that all these people working on our sites have the operator qualifications and really going forward. In terms of what you've done, Jim, in terms of the Energy Worldnet, do you see that this is really an expanding market of confidence in the people, and then confidence, and then it could also turn into confidence in the actual information?
Do you see the planning and the tools?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I cannot tell you one entity, one organization that I'm involved with in some fashion that safety is not paramount first and foremost, because it's safety for the people right now, as well as the safety of the people 30 years from now or 20 years from now that are living in that area, over that pipeline or near that project or whatever it is. Every entity that I'm involved with, and when I go to all the gas association trade events and such, people are always, the nice thing about those trade events is people do not, they leave their, let's just say, they share anything and everything about safety. And when you go to those trade events, there's committees and people from all different pipelines, all different utilities, all different local distribution companies get together and they share ideas, and because they want the best for the industry and they want the best for the constituents and the best for the people that live in the areas that they're doing work. So the sharing of best practices is absolutely continues each and every day. That's one of the reasons I'm so proud to be in the energy industry, is because of that people, they put aside their company banner, so to speak, and talk about safety and talk about best practices and how we can be better as an industry. That's what I love about our industry. And we see.
What's
Did I?
what? Yeah, sorry. I was gonna kind of piggyback off what you two were saying and kind of say, what else can we do better? Because we're seeing this as well. There's damage prevention conventions, and there's so many measures that companies, and to give everyone credit, like this is a top priority for the industry, and yet we're still seeing pipeline explosions. We're still seeing utility strikes. And what are you seeing in the oil and gas industry that are kind of, let's say, key measures that we can take to prevent these stuff?
Well, it starts, and I hate to make this sound simple, but it starts with the individual, and that individual feeling empowered that they have the ability to see something, say something. So that's right where the rubber hits the road. It happens, and it goes all the way through the chain from planning, projects, But somebody could have the best plan, as we talked about, but when somebody has boots on the ground out there and they see something, they're like, I didn't see this on the plan. This looks a little different to me. Am I going to go with the idea that it's probably okay because it's not on the plan so somebody knows about it? Or do they see something, say something, make a phone call? I see a condition here that's not on the plan, doesn't look right. I'm not going to move forward until that's resolved. And that's a very hard thing to do because you might, everybody has project deadlines, right? Everybody does. You need to get such and such done. We need to get this podcast done by blank time today. We're under deadlines. But if something were to happen that we need to say, hold on, time out, we need to pause for a second. We have to make sure. It has to go all the way up the chain where people applaud that person for taking the time to do something, to see something.
Taking the initiative, yeah.
And even if and if we talk about 811, and I've been to, I can't tell you how many 811 events I've been to throughout my career, and they're wonderful because of the sharing of knowledge and the understanding of best practices and what people have seen underground. One time I saw this, and people are like, "Really? Okay." And if that person can take that and learn from it, and expand that knowledge. That's one thing in our industry. We have so much knowledge that people have in their heads, and we need to expand it and share it. So the sharing of knowledge, and I'll be honest with you, like at 4M, where you folks can look at above and below and satellites and this and that and everything, and possibly get that information into people's hands out in the field, that's better. I mean, that's again, moving it along the way where, again, it's never 100%, but at least you have a highly increased confidence level that what you're doing is, you feel good about it. So that's some of my thoughts about that. But 811, if somebody were to say, I'm not going to move forward because I'm going to call 811 again, have them come out again just to make sure, because this looks a little bit different, I applaud that person. Take the time to do what's right. See something, say something.
So I actually want to expand on that. Looking at 811, 811's function is absolutely amazing in the States where it's for excavation. But that's the whole point. It's for a safe and guided excavation only. It's not for the engineering. It's not for the pre-planning. And understanding that that clear line between that, saying, okay, let's actually invest money into that investigation prior to, so that when we get to 811, it's just a verification. It's just a guiding factor of where not to dig, so we can actually have it marked on the ground so that our excavators and our people can actually accommodate safely. But looking at that, it's that whole understanding of I have to invest in my engineering. I have to invest in actually understanding what's there so I can plan and mitigate accordingly. What do you see in the industry you've been in terms of the investment in the engineering, for example, in FEED, front-end engineering design of a pipeline? Have you seen that really integrated in, or has that just been another step on the process of let's do our land, let's do our right of way? Is there a big focus on the underground, or is it more focused on the land acquisition and the optics?
At least in my past, we tried to do as much as we can. Now, again, this was let's just say a decade ago, and we've come a long way in a decade. A decade ago, we were using paper maps and paper charts and such like that. I'm not joking. I mean, we have some things electronically, but a lot of things had been, from the last 20 years on paper. And we also learned, though, too, that being penny wise can be pound short, meaning that if you're going forward and you don't understand that, again, back to my example before, if you're not clear on
hang on,
it can
Jim.
delay people on the ground.
Jim, can you just repeat that? Jim, can you just repeat that for 10 seconds?
We lost 10 seconds.
Yeah, we lost 10 seconds of you. From the penny wise, pound short.
Internet glitch. But being penny wise and pound short, we want to do as much as we can up front to understand what not only land acquisition and right of ways and all those, but what are some of the barriers that could be there that could, because if we're going down a path and we didn't understand as an industry that there's a pipeline going, across it, that's a problem, folks. That just doesn't get solved by itself. That could be a 3-month or a 4-month delay in rerouting.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely,
pre-planning is key to being not just safety, but also with your ROIs. You don't want to. Nobody likes surprises, and so absolutely you want to have as much information about anything up front.
So I'm going to bring up another topic, which is really interesting. But way back when we had those nice paper plans, they were done with pride and they were really done well. There's some of them that really. Then you started having the I call it the 80s and 90s of let's get it done and let's just put it down and let's put it there and we'll figure it out later. Then all of a sudden, the late 90s, early 2000s, and especially in the 2010 era, you had digitization. Let's get it digital. Let's make sure it looks good. And I call that the social media effect, where it looks really good what we're looking at, but how accurate is it? It looks absolutely this digital visualization, this digital presentation looks amazing. And I bet I can now base my engineering based upon this visualization, and here I'll have 3 feet clearance, here I'll have 2 feet clearance, and I'll do my bore path based upon that. And then you get out to reality and it's nowhere near what it's supposed to be, but it looked great digitally. But it's just a matter of now taking that information and building confidence on the digital median. So what do you say about the digital process and the digital visualization and the digital revolution which we've gone through? How do we make it actually more reliable and not visually appetizing, but also right through and through
workable?
Workable.
Yeah.
I'm along the same. I mean, we've come leaps and bounds from where we've been, and we know that. Well, I guess one thing, it's just like with PSMS, Pipeline Safety Management Systems. There's never an end to it. It's always a journey. You're always improving and always making your processes safer and better and such like that. And I think your example is just that. We've come leaps and bounds in the last 20 years in those realms. But are we there yet? I should say we're never going to be there because we can always get better. Augmented reality, virtual reality, those type of things where, we've seen some of this technology where people can be on a backhoe and look through goggles and see lines in the ground that, are augmented reality. That's wild. That's great. Now, is that the end of it? No, it's going to even get better. I don't know what that's going to look like, but those are the things that are exciting, that our technology is being incorporated into our processes and to make our processes better all the way. And it just takes, organizations embracing the new technologies. Like, again, 30 years ago, paper maps were the greatest. And the person that had those paper maps, and he or she, when they did it all, they knew exactly where it was. Well, guess what? That person probably is now retired and right down the road here in West Palm Beach, and they're retired. And now somebody's looking at that map and they're saying, well, he or she, what did they mean by that? Well, I'm not really sure, but it's probably not important. That's where we want to make sure that we carry on the knowledge sets. And when we do capture it electronically or technically and in those formats, the more information we have, the better it is for continuing that education of that, as continuing of learning of it, being better. So
it's a lofty goal, but always constantly thriving to get to our goals and really do better. And that's one thing which I always look at. How can I do better tomorrow? What steps have I taken to actually get to that point where we are doing better? Now, you mentioned before asset management. Are you also building OQs for asset management?
They're
Or are
not
you building a Q? Oh,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
or are you building sets of QA for asset management?
Yeah. So asset management, it's not an OQ. OQ is specific to people,
Officer
human beings,
qualification, yeah.
like that. But we realize, though, in the industry that assets are just as important. Let me take that back. Humans are the most important, but assets are, let's just say, a close second to it. And to make sure that those assets are in good working order. When we talk about this, I'll think about this. It's easy if an operator has 3 employees, okay, and they have one fusion machine, and that's all they do, and they do it themselves. That's easy. Now you think about an operator that has 8,000 technicians, and they use 800 contractors. It's just like managing OQs. It was easy with the 3 people. I can manage their OQs. Now you have 8,000 employees inside your organization and 800 contract firms that could have between 5 and 500 people unto themselves. It's hard to manage all that. And we take the same aspect with assets, the importance of them, because more and more regulators, when there's an audit, hopefully it's just a regular audit just to double check things. But if there should be an issue in the industry and there's an audit because of an issue, the regulators are going to want to know exactly who was on site, what their OQs were at the time, what equipment was used, where is that equipment now at the time of the project, what was the state of the equipment, was it calibrated, was it inspected, was it all maintained? And, things are easy when you have one piece of equipment and you have a file folder and you just put it in the folder and you put it in the file box. When you start having thousands and thousands and you need to have it manageable, that's the key. And we want people to go out to a site and be able to use their phone and scan their equipment and get a green check saying, to the best of their knowledge, that piece of equipment is up to speed according to all the criteria that's put in. The technician knows that a green check mark means it's inspected, calibrated, to the best of the abilities. They still have to do their due diligence every day, but they at least have the confidence to know that at least the shift beforehand, everything worked good. If all of a sudden this shift, a hydraulic hose starts to look like it's cracking, make a note in the system right then saying, hey, there's a problem with this hose. So when the next crew comes on, they can say, oh, wow, there's a red check mark. Oh, we have to get this. We can't use this because we need to get a hydraulic hose fixed, or whatever the case may be. So we're taking the assets up to a place where, again, our goal is to make the world a safer place to work, a safer place to be, a safer place to live. And assets are key to that. So it's kind of along the same lines as OQ for people. Think about the same type of data tracking, data management for, and as well as reactive as proactive for assets.
You know what? By saying, sorry, David, I'm just my train of thought here is really, we talk about all this. Where do we actually tie this into the utilities in the ground? It's the same concept. It's the exact same thing. We want the best information. We want to make sure that everything we've done is to get that green check. Why are we not looking at everything, all the utility information from the past to bring forward to the future, and going out and doing doing our 811 and really see something, say something as you stated, but really understanding that do I have all the different pieces of information? Has the chain of custody of the utility information right through the years been preserved, or have things gotten lost and missing? I
think 2 points. So preserved is great, and maybe it's documented, it's put in there, but usable. It's just like anything, like anything in the world. All the information could be documented. All the information about my pickup truck, my Dodge Ram, is documented. But if people can't see it or use it, it's pretty worthless, right? And that's the key. Yeah. I feel good because I know it's documented. But let's just say, whatever. Maybe somebody else doesn't know that it's documented or where to find that information or how to use it. Know when the tires were changed last, know when the oil change was last, especially if I don't do it if I do it through different entities. And that's what we're doing with this, making it, reduce silos. So we're bringing it together, and with 4M and what you folks are doing, when you try to, it doesn't happen overnight, but bringing all the information together and reducing those silos so people can see a better picture and a more clearer picture.
Interesting. Okay, David,
Jim,
sorry about that.
Yeah, we're used to this type of conversation. I guess it's our Israeli culture.
Yeah.
Jim, I wanted to ask, how receptive are you feeling that the industry is to new technologies? Because, obviously, there's some who are very receptive and some who will give you some pushback. But I think one feedback that we've seen, and I think we had this on the podcast with Hugh Seaton, who said that today, project managers, they want to work with technologies that give them value tomorrow morning. Like they want to take stuff to the side and work with them tomorrow morning. So what are your thoughts about that?
Instant ROI.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. I'll self-deprecate myself on this one. Okay, at my age, when I said that a year and a half ago, I started to learn how to do Zoom calls and video calls and such like that. I may be a good example of the industry. Let's just take the energy industry that, I've been doing things for 20 years and that's worked well for me. The issue is that's my bubble and it works well for me. And then God willing, in 10 years when I get to retire, how do I pass that on to the next generation? And that gets back to what your point was. I think the generation, my youngest daughter is just now entering the energy industry, and she's, at her age, just out of college, she sees the world. I mean, she gets on things like this and iPads and notes and this and that and the other thing. And she wants and expects to be using that in her world. Now, when we take a look at, engineers that in my age group maybe do it a certain way, engineers coming right out of school see it a different way. So I think it's an interesting time of blending of the mindsets, the different generations. And it's exciting because honestly, I am learning every day from the generation that's just entering the energy industry now. I really do. And I want to, because I realize that my way of doing things on paper pads, and notes and the things that I've done for 20 some years can be better because it can be shared and all these other things. So as much as the generation entering can learn from people like me, what has worked well, what didn't work, and since it didn't work, what did we learn from it? That's the most important thing. If something doesn't work well and there's a problem, not just fix it, but what do we learn from it and how can we be better next time? That's the key to it. And, teaching those folks, the next generation, as well as that generation, teaching us how great some of this technology is. And when they expect it, it kind of makes us all look at things a little bit differently. And change is hard. Some people embrace change right away, and others are like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But I really think it takes us, and I keep going back to our state and regional and national gas associations. When you get these folks together and you get them on committees and people start to hear these things and the ideas and the best practices and the goodness that comes out of it, then it starts to take off. And does it happen overnight? No, it doesn't. But it's happening. And I see it each and every day that we're getting better as an industry.
Jim, speaking of the younger generation, in a sentence or two sentences, what is your best advice for them entering the energy, oil, and gas industry?
Best advice.
Where do you start?
Where do I start? The biggest thing is I'm not being facetious, make friends. And not just in your department, in your company, but make friends in the industry. This industry is built on relationships, and people work together for the betterment of the industry and the sharing of ideas. So make relationships. Know that you're not going to change the world overnight, but always be that eye for how can we make it better? How can we make it more productive? And at the keystone of everything, the cornerstone, how can we make it safer? Safety is first and foremost number one. And the second is, to have fun. we need to have fun each and every day. We have to be happy each and every day. When
Absolutely.
we're having fun.
We
Again,
approve this message.
Yeah, I'm not saying being frivolous, but right now I'm having fun with you guys. We're on here, we're chatting.
Likewise.
And it's a good time. And people have to have fun every day, because if they're the right person in the right seat, they're having fun every day. And when they're fun, they're thinking, they're being productive, they're trying to be proactive, they're looking at the future. And again, don't be afraid. Next generation, do not be afraid to come up to somebody like to me to say, I think I have a better way of doing it. Don't be afraid to say that. I might say, oh no, I've been doing it that way for 20 years. You don't know. Keep after somebody like me and say, if you just, get rid of your Motorola flip phone and go to an iPhone, you might be able to.
Maybe.
I still remember my StarTech.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I still or my Nokia, my little Nokia, with that specific ringtone. Yeah, or the Ericsson. Wow.
Yeah, they were all military grade.
Bag. There used to be a bag back in the day that had a phone, and you put it over your shoulder.
The brick. Yeah.
Ridiculous. Yeah. Jim, one last question, and I hope we don't take you by surprise. Who do you think should be our next guest on the podcast? Who do we have to have? Talk about the oil and gas industry.
Wow. I mean, there's so many people. Who do you want? Do you want an operator? Do you want a contractor? Do you want a state, a gas association? What do you?
Oh, there we go. I mean, whatever you feel.
Ophir, choose. Ophir, it's up to you to choose.
Yeah, for me, I want to see a gas association. I want to see what their opinion is about that underground realm. I want to see what they're thinking and how they think things can get better.
Yeah.
David Tapman from the Louisiana Gas Association is a good one. Daryl Cherry.
We're going to hold you accountable for that, Jim.
Yeah.
What's that?
We're going to hold you accountable for the introductions.
Yeah. If you can give us a personal introduction, we'd appreciate it.
That's what I do in the. Well, again, I don't know hardly everything, but I know people and I connect the dots. Is what I do.
Like you said, it's all about relationships.
Yeah. Oh,
fantastic. Gas Association, APGA, Aaron Carilla, Stuart Salters over there. Stuart's wonderful on podcasts.
There we go.
You keep going on and on.
Yeah.
So one last question for you. How has your golf game suffered in the last 2 years of being in the podcast world and not on the back nine, doing these deals and talking to people?
You love it.
Okay, I live in Florida, West Palm Beach area, and I don't golf. I golf.
Really?
Yeah. Now, so my golf.
Shocked faces here for those of you listening.
No, I love to get out and golf with customers and industry people just for fellowship, but I'm not I find that after, honestly, after about 12 holes, I need to move on to something else. My ADHD or whatever you want to call it is kicking in. It's too much time.
The energy. Yeah.
So I have a really funny story about this. I think it was in 1999. I went golfing with a friend of mine from CWNG, and that was Canadian Western Natural Gas. And he told me, if you're ever going to succeed in life, make sure that you know how to golf and make sure you know how to carry a conversation on the golf course. You may not be good at it, but make sure you know how to carry on that conversation and enjoy it. And it's a life lesson, and I've taken it to heart, and I've really enjoyed it. I'm horrible at golf, but I enjoy golf.
And it gets back to the relationships. And when you get people out of the office, whether that's a trade event or a golf course,
amazing things happen. Amazing.
Just breaking bread and spending time getting to know that person.
Oh, perfect.
Well, Jim, it's been first of all, it's been an honor. We've been listening to the episodes, and to kind of now have a conversation with you is really, really cool for us. We've had a great time, and we thank you for being here and spending time with us.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure. It's my honor to be on with you folks. It's great. Absolutely great.
Yeah.